Hey there! If you're a Riverdale fan like we are, this video is definitely for you. This chilling and intense CW drama is based on Archie's comics, and their real-life counterparts look pretty similar to the characters in the comics. Since 2017, viewers have been sucked into the dark, juicy secrets of Riverdale, and based on one situation, this seemingly perfect little town is discovered to be not so perfect after all. Well, one thing's for sure, this show features a very strong cast. With KJ Apa as Archie, Lili Reinhart as Betty, Camila Mendes as Veronica, and Cole Sprouse as Jughead, the actors definitely bring the characters and the comics to life. Today though, we're here to talk about some hidden gems in this popular TV show, shedding light on some Riverdale tidbits you most likely never noticed. And you won't believe how subtle some of these little Easter eggs really are. Well, we want to dive right in, but as usual friends, if you haven't caught up on this steamy teen drama quite yet, here's your spoiler alert. Let's get to it! So remember when Chuck Clayton posts that picture on Instagram and proceeds to slut-shame Veronica? Yeah, we didn't like that one bit either. Well, the whole school sees that picture with the term sticky maple, and Veronica can barely walk the halls without being stared at or laughed at. As we know, on social media, when something goes viral, pretty much everyone sees it, especially in a small town like Riverdale. But what you may not have noticed, friends, is that as Veronica is scrolling through the comments, she sees some pretty ruthless comments from her classmates. And we see that some of these characters are from the comics, but are not yet on the show at the time. For example, we catch a glimpse of names like Tony Topaz, Marie Rodriguez, and Frankie Valdez in the comments. And as we know, Tony Topaz ends up playing a pretty big role on the show. So it's pretty cool that the creators were already setting the building blocks in place to bring new characters from the comics to life. So, we love when the show pays homage to the comic book characters that we haven't necessarily seen yet. We see this in Season 2 once again, when Archie is buying a gun and has to use a fake ID. Well, friends, he uses the name Wilbur Wilkins on his fake ID, which is a reference to the comic book character Wilbur Wilkins, who lived in the neighboring town of Greendale. Riverdale, Greendale, we don't know what's up with all the Dales, but clearly there's a pattern there. Well, Wilbur Wilkins was the main character in the comic book series Wilbur Comics, which ran from 1944 to 1965. Pretty cool that they brought this classic character onto Riverdale in some way. Next, let's talk about Jughead. Well, in the comics, friends, Jughead always wears a crown. And it would be pretty weird to bring this character to life and actually have him wearing a crown all the time. But the creators didn't miss a thing, since we see the tattoo on his arm features a serpent wearing a crown. And not only do we see the crown on his tattoo, but there's also a crown drawn onto his motorcycle helmet. So they made sure that the royal Juggy was definitely represented on multiple levels. It's a super subtle hint, but we love how details from the comics are incorporated into this show. Well, speaking of Archie comics, there was also the Little Archie comic book series. When Archie is expressing his feelings about Betty to Veronica, he talks about how they go way back to their childhood, and that when they were kids, he actually proposed to Betty. But her response was, "Oh, little Archie." This, friends, is definitely a reference to the Little Archie comic book, in which we see the escapades and adventures of our favorite Archie characters as kids. We love the little references to these classic comic book characters and their stories. Oh, and did we mention that the Little Archie photographs displayed on the Andrews fridge are actual real-life pictures of KJ Apa? How cute! Yes, friends, the creators made sure not to miss even a minor detail in bringing these stories to life. We see pictures of the actor as a child, making the theme of Little Archie even more accurate all around. There are a ton of little references to other comics, TV shows, and classic films throughout. For example, we know that Sabrina the Teenage Witch is also based off a book, and we actually see FP reading a Sabrina comic while he's in jail. Pretty cool to see another one of our favorite characters be represented in this way. Speaking of FP, the creators also decided to sneak in a little Les Miserables reference. we see the iconic number 24601, which is Jean Valjean's prisoner number in the musical. This also happens to be the number on FP's uniform, which we catch a little glimpse of. Pretty clever, paying homage to the classic Victor Hugo novel and the musical that came later. There is also definitely a love for classic horror throughout this show. We see Betty reading Silence of the Lambs at one point. We think this is a clever parallel since the movie develops the eerie interactions of Clarice and Hannibal Lecter, similar in some ways to Betty's interactions and relationship with the Black Hood. Another reference to horror, paying homage to the famous author from the early 1900s, H.P. Lovecraft. His dark horror and fantasy books have become more popular with time, and it has clearly influenced the making of Riverdale, since we see references in dialogue like when Tony says, "Wow, Jones, props to you." It's very Lovecraftian, and the two talk about how the work is inspired by H.P. Lovecraft. We see multiple references to the gothic horror author throughout the show. Riverdale fans, you remember that drug we know as Jingle Jangle? Well, there's actually a 1960s song by the Archies called Jingle Jangle, which has been repurposed on the show. The tune is pretty catchy, so if you decide to take a listen, it's probably going to get stuck in your head. Well, we're pretty sure the song is about love and romance, but it's the 60s, so you really never know. There could be some subliminal drug references throughout the song that we don't even know about. If you find one, or a couple, let us know in the comments. And speaking of the Archies, we also see Josie and the Pussycats perform the halftime show for the high school. Music is a very central theme throughout this show, as well as in the comics, so we love that it is incorporated in a super entertaining way. They perform a modern version of the song Sugar Sugar. We see Josie and the Pussycats in the comments, but the song Sugar Sugar actually did become super popular in 1969 when the Archies released the original song. So they took this classic song, made a couple changes, and turned it into this magical modern tune. The original was super catchy, and so is the remake. The parallels between the comics and the show run very deep, but our favorite one? Riverdale High was opened the same year as the creation of the Archie comics, 1941. When we see Betty and Veronica walking the halls of the high school, Betty tells Veronica that Riverdale High first opened its doors in 1941, to which Veronica quips, "and hasn't been redecorated since." Riverdale High is the crux of the show, as well as in the comics, so it's pretty satisfying knowing that the writers decided to make the conception of the school the same year as the conception of the Archie comics. Go Riverdale creators! So, fellow Riverdale fans, there you have it. We absolutely love the story, plot lines, and characters in Archie, and how they're brought to life in Riverdale. But we love even more all the little hidden Easter eggs throughout the show. And we wanted to share some of our favorites with you. So, what's your favorite hidden gem? And have you found some more? Leave us a comment below. As usual, be sure to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell as we bring you more juicy info, gossip, and speculation about the shows and stars you know and love. Until next time!